Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here.
Okay, question number 1. Please tell us about yourself, your family, and your background, job experience, and what makes you believe you're the best candidate to hold the position of Mayor of Darby.
We've been in Darby now for 6 years. I have 2 children, a wife. We own 2 businesses. We employ people here in the community. I was a graduate of Georgia Tech from the Georgia Institute of Technology, industrial designer out in Atlanta. That was before the economy fell apart in 2008. And much like Teresa was talking about before, is we started from scratch. And we found our way to Montana, and we fell in love with the beauty of Montana, but also the idea that it is the last best place. And we chose Darby to raise our children, to invest in real estate and land here and raise our children. I've been self-employed most of my life. I've managed large projects, I've managed small projects, lots of people, and over time, lots of money. Managing and doing projects from construction, property management, and real estate have been a part of my life since graduating from college. The idea of managing a small community's resources at $750,000 is not overwhelming, and managing 6 to 8 employees is not something that I'm unusual with doing in the past. So from that perspective, looking at some leadership or some management in the town of Darby, it was not difficult to imagine that I could have some skills that I could bring to the community. We currently own a business just down the street, as well as another one that takes us all through the Rocky Mountain states all summer long.
Very good. All right. You caught me off guard there, JC. I was trying to figure out what the other business is. What is your short-term vision or your 2-year plan for Darby, and how do you plan to execute it?
And I can answer the other question.
Okay.
So our other business, we do Young Guns Entertainment, where we go around throughout the Rocky Mountain states with fairs and provide entertainment for children 10 and under.
Wow.
And we've been doing that for 7 years. And what that's given us the opportunity to do is to see so many small communities. We have traveled North Dakota, South Dakota, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Washington, Oregon, and we have spent time in tons of small communities. By now, my children have been to more fairs than many of you as adults have ever been to. So we get to see a lot of small communities and the pros and cons of these small communities. And we chose Darby to move and live here. So our 2-year plan, really I have scaled back my 2-year plan to pretty much one thing, to create and implement a balanced budget for our community. You cannot create any growth, you could not implement any good policy, and you could not change your community in any positive way if you are going into debt. None of us can personally, we can't as a community. So in the 2 short years, I hope to implement a balanced budget and for us to begin to create reserves so that we can start to create a strong economic policy for the future.
Very good. What is your long-term vision or your 10-year plan for Darby, and how do you plan to execute it?
So we're faced with a few issues in Darby, and I think to tap into one thing we all recognize is that everything breaks. Our house leaks, the roof falls apart, our refrigerator fails, the roads fail, but our water and our sewer systems fail. And we just recently had to update our water system in 2008, 2009. So things break, and you have to plan for these kind of expenses into the future. And some of the major infrastructure that we look to don't cost $500, $1,000. They cost several million, and they go upwards to $8 to $10 million. And it's not dependent on how many residents we have in the community. It's a requirement by agencies like the Department of Environmental Quality as to how much we have to spend. So in the 10-year plan, one of the long-term plans, we just got a report from a consultant working with the DEQ that's saying we need to start planning within 4 years of doing some work on our sewer lagoons, and that we need to actually implement those repairs within 5 to 7 years. And I'm not a wastewater specialist, but what we have now is nowhere near enough. And it could be $1 million, and it could be $10 million. And that's not my expertise. But we need to start planning now to prepare for that eventuality. Because if we don't, there will be a dramatic raise in water and sewer fees in order to cover us going into debt to borrow the money for these necessary repairs. All things break. We need to prepare for them in the future and plan for that. Now, in a very short sense, if we can balance a budget, it can lead us to the opportunity where we create reserves, a little bit of a savings account. Instead of going into debt every year, we start getting ahead of the game just a little bit. Then we can start implementing policies like bringing Montana Main Street program in to develop an economic growth plan for our community. We could start to address some of our substandard housing and ways to improve the housing in Darby. We can start to work to create a commercial and industrial district so that we can bring manufacturing into our community, which will bring more businesses and more families and more housing. So the first step is you got to stop going in debt. The second step, which will take longer, is that we can start to save and create positive policies that will improve our community. In the very long term, the 10-year plan is that we have to keep the money for the water and sewer system separate so that we can prepare to replace those systems when it's time. Otherwise, we'll have to borrow so much money that will dramatically increase our water and sewer rates. And my fear is, for many fixed income or for the renters, is that we'll see a mass migration out of the town of Darby. In my mind, as a local leader, that is irresponsible. We need to start planning for the future today.
Good answer. What are the biggest obstacles you anticipate in achieving your goals?
The first one is the perception that this is the way we've always done it and it's been fine. Is that all of a sudden I come in as mayor and I'm the reason that there's a problem. Everything's fine until it's not fine. Everything's good until the water system fails, and then you got to go and borrow $1.5 million. That happened in 2008 and 2009. So you could continue that everything's fine and keep doing the same thing, and then one day the sewer system will fail, the roads will fail, your parks will fail, and then it's not fine. And then you suddenly realize you didn't plan, you don't have the resources available to fix them, and that you have to borrow a lot of money, and that the residents are now paying for it again. You paid through fees the first time, and because of poor planning, you're going to have to pay again. So that's the way we've always done it, to try to change that perception that we've always had good planning, we've always been preparing for the future, and yet to stop and start taking a look at the actual finances and the actual costs is a tremendous obstacle that I face. One of the others is that people, for some reason, we've been doing things in the same way for so many years that when faced with a change, is that they deny. That can't be right. That can't be right. I could show you data. I could have accountants. I could have specialists from local government services. I could have an auditor come in here. I could have attorneys come in here. And yet all those people are wrong. It can't be right. So we need to start using some of the best resources we can to start educating ourselves. And this is the community leadership of what we need to do to start moving forward. And that's a very difficult thing to understand, is that, hey, I know I'm telling you a different message, but it's not coming from me. I go out and get these professionals and get their advice and get their opinion, and I correlate it, not just with one person, but 2, 3, 4, 5. I have them come give speeches to the council, give talks, give presentations, and still to this day is deny. We have to start accepting that we cannot continue going down this pathway.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the community while you have the opportunity?
I have a note here. Tonight's a good time to try to dispel some of the rumors and accusations that we have out there. And we need to get down to the root issue. is that we need to start talking about what really is important to the community. We need to talk about our finances and how are we going to move forward. A lack of a plan is not a plan in itself. We need to start preparing for the future, and we need to do that responsibly. Now, because it's such a big change in the community, for our 8-9 years we've been going into deficit spending, to make such a big change is that it's going to be hard the first year. It's going to be very difficult. But at some point, as an elected official and a community leader, you need to say, I need to prepare for the 700 for the future. I need to do what's best for the 700 so that we can move forward in a positive manner through growth. So I welcome any questions, no matter how hard they may be, or how nasty maybe the accusations may be. I am willing to answer those accusations, get down to the root